Chris felt terrible, having slept for less than half an hour in total last night. He desperately wanted to go home and rest in bed, and he was so distressed that he started to cry. Shell was quite worried about him and didn't know how to comfort him, so she simply sat quietly by his side, listening to him talk. Chris felt extremely sick and lacked the energy to do anything else. Shell believed that a good night's sleep would help him recover. Just as she finished speaking, Chris began to vomit, worsening the situation. They immediately called a doctor. After examining him, the doctor decided that Chris couldn't stay as his condition was likely caused by insect bites and recommended that he rest properly in a hospital. The doctor administered an injection to alleviate his symptoms and mentioned that if Chris did not improve, he might have to withdraw from the challenge. Chris felt he couldn't continue with the challenge. When Adam and his team woke up, they started grilling meat. The 100+ pounds of meat would suffice for 3 people for several days. Sometimes having too much meat was problematic as it spoiled easily in such environments, so they tried to eat as much as they could. Today, Adam planned to make shoes out of crocodile skin. He first scraped the flesh from the hide and then dried it. However, due to the high humidity, drying the skin was not easy. Lindsay struggled every day with collecting firewood, managing only a little after a whole day's work. Maintaining a fire here was extremely difficult. If Tara hadn't injured her hand, she would have liked to work too, as staying in the shelter was really boring. She just hoped her teammates would have a smooth adventure outside. Lindsay and Nathan felt that the surroundings all looked the same, and it was easy to lose their way. They would walk a path and then find themselves back where they started. With no other options, they had to seek help from Tara. As they met up, they spotted a snake on the ground. Not wanting to miss the chance for food, Tara quickly killed it with a knife, and they easily had meat to eat. Lindsay hadn't seen meat for a long time and was nearly moved to tears. Tara showed her how to quickly process the snake meat, explaining that eating parts like the heart raw was delicious, and that the cooked snake meat tasted really great. After eating, the 3 felt revitalized. After his injection, Chris did not feel any better. The doctor was very concerned about his health, but further checks showed no physical issues. The doctor thought it might be psychological and that Chris could continue if he overcame this mental barrier. Thus, Chris decided to persist a bit longer. Kayla was so exhausted she could barely stand. At night, the mosquitoes were rampant, and she could only rest a bit during the day. She was so hungry that she felt dizzy, and drinking more water didn't seem to help. To drink water faster, she placed the pot in a stream to cool it down. However, due to her exhaustion, she didn't hold it steady, causing the pot to tip over. Unable to hold back, Kayla cried. She hadn't expected the challenge to be this difficult and thought maybe she should really go home. Chris finally started feeling a bit better, but then faced a heavy downpour. He stayed in the shelter, unable to do anything, feeling very downhearted. He didn't want to continue like this and decided to withdraw from the challenge. His teammates tried to persuade him, but to no avail. They could only watch as Chris left the area. Within less than a week, 3 contestants had already withdrawn, which speaks volumes about the harshness of the environment. Chris withdrew from the challenge. Although Mallory and Shell were somewhat upset, they still persisted to complete the challenge. Kyla's fire had gone out at some point, and with the heavy rain outside, she couldn't reignite it. Shivering from the cold, she endured the discomfort and went outside to find some leaves to cover herself with. The rain continued until dawn. Resources here were really scarce. Lindsay suggested moving farther away to catch fish if the environment was suitable. They could then move their shelter there. Tara wasn't very convinced, but it was indeed hard to get food in this area. In the end, they decided to take a risk and explore further. Kayla felt truly miserable and considered whether to quit the challenge. However, she decided to first check the fishing line. The situation wasn't very promising. The bait was eaten, but no fish were caught. Just when she thought it was time to go home, the fishing line moved. After being here for so long, Kayla finally caught a big fish and cried with excitement. Back at the shelter, she immediately started a fire to grill the fish. Although she often thought about giving up, The aroma of the cooking fish gave her the strength to keep going. Tara and her group had walked a long distance but were still far from any water source. Tara felt severely dehydrated, and her body couldn't take it anymore. She had to squat down and rest for a while. On the 7th day of the challenge, Tara was dehydrated and felt extremely unwell. With no other option, she had to wait for her teammates to bring some water from a found source. It was unclear if Tara could hold on, as the jungle was difficult to navigate. Lindsay couldn't keep up with Nathan's pace, and with ants everywhere, she felt very irritable. It took them a lot of time to find a small pond. But it wasn't time to rest yet. They needed to quickly dig a well to bring water back for Tara. Nathan chose a spot close to the water source to dig the well. Once completed, they just needed to guard against monkeys that might cause damage. From then on, they could save time boiling water and do other things. The river water seeped in very quickly. Nathan used a natural straw to draw the water up. This murky water needed to be settled for a while before drinking, but because Tara was getting weaker, Nathan had to bring the water to her first. Tara felt like she was about to die of dehydration. Fortunately, Nathan was quick on his feet. Upon seeing the water, Tara didn't care how murky it was and immediately started gulping it down. After drinking, she felt a bit better and was able to stand up and move again. They needed to hurry to meet up with Lindsay. Tara felt that she was really holding the team back. She had injured her hand earlier, and now she was dealing with dehydration. Thankfully, her teammates didn't give up on her, or else she feared she wouldn't be able to continue the challenge. Kayela, who had it the hardest, had lost a lot of weight. She was very irritable now, having to take care of all tasks by herself. She simply didn't have the energy to complete them, and had to find time to catch fish to eat. Continuing this way, she couldn't possibly complete the challenge. Kayela could only take things one step at a time. She used leftover fish bones as bait, hoping to attract a crocodile. She had set up the bait where she could see schools of fish swimming by. While no crocodiles appeared, catching an eel would also be good. Kayela was pinning her hopes on this. She needed more food to fill her stomach, as wild fruits alone wouldn't be enough to get her through the challenge. Meanwhile, Adam's group was either eating crocodile meat or resting, having a relatively pleasant time. However, one crocodile was not enough. Once they were nearly out of meat, Adam felt they could catch another one to continue eating. Sam wished they could eat one every day. Heather had seen a crocodile in the water that morning and planned to make a trap using a large fish hook, using leftover crocodile innards as bait. Even through the screen, one could almost smell the stench of the innards, which surely the nearby crocodiles could sense. Heather placed the trap where crocodiles usually roamed, just waiting for one to jump at the bait. Now, they just had to wait for nature's gift. Suddenly, Sam felt pain in his groin. Who would have thought that a tick had burrowed into his private parts? He could feel it moving deeper. Sam definitely didn't want to end up like Heather. Adam was relieved he wasn't the target. Through the screen, one could almost feel how painful it was. Heather advised against pulling it out, as it could easily lead to an infection. It was best to call a doctor to handle it. The production team had not anticipated this situation. The doctor could only use tweezers to remove the tick. Adam could hardly bear to look, fearing he might be next. Thankfully, they eventually got it out. Given the size of the tick, one could imagine how painful it was for Sam. After disinfecting the area, Sam felt much better. Tara finally met up with Lindsay. Although the place wasn't very big, there was a small beach area with lots of small fish in the water. The resources here were sufficient for them to recover. Lindsay was quite pleased with the place. Nathan tried to catch some fish using a net, hoping the decision to move was the right one. Otherwise, it would be a waste of so much time and effort. However, the net got stuck as soon as it was cast, which worried Lindsay greatly. She felt she might collapse at any moment, and the team atmosphere was getting worse. If they didn't manage to get food in the next 2 days, their bodies definitely wouldn't hold up. Tara felt it might have been better to stay in the original place, where at least there was somewhere to rest at night. After Chris left, Shell and Mallory were barely managing to sustain themselves with fish and wild fruits. Mallory was mainly responsible for fishing, and the weather being hot and humid, each outing was draining. If they couldn't catch 7 or 8 small fish at a time, it was hard to satisfy their hunger. Shell was in charge of finding firewood to keep the fire going and collecting a considerable amount of berries along the way. Keeping a good mindset was crucial for survival in the wild. Mallory caught a fish, but it wasn't very big, barely enough to replenish some energy. Lindsay is fairly satisfied with her current life, hoping to catch more fish with it. To complete the 40-day challenge, the little food they had was hardly enough to keep them going. Soon, the fish basket was ready, and Mallory immediately placed it in the water, hoping the bait was enticing enough. Tara and her group started heading back, their latest expedition turning out to be quite bad. Now, both their physical and mental states were deteriorating. Despite this, if there was a chance, Lindsay still wanted to explore further. Tara felt it was her fault. If she hadn't suffered from dehydration and exhaustion, perhaps her teammates could have ventured further. She still needed her teammates to take care of her and felt like a burden to the team. Although Lindsay and Nathan didn't mind, Tara was very disappointed in herself and even thought about quitting the challenge. At night, Kayla felt immense pressure. Surviving in the wild required a lot of firewood daily, and just collecting it exhausted her. Now, she also had to keep the fire from going out. At night, she could only close her eyes and rest briefly, unable to sleep through till morning. Without enough food and sleep, it was too difficult to complete the challenge alone. Shell was awakened in the middle of the night by the noise of a crocodile in the water nearby. With the crocodile so close, she worried it might come ashore and attack the shelter. They decided to take the initiative to drive the crocodile away. Fortunately, the crocodile wasn't very big, and they managed to scare it off by making some noise. If it hadn't been so dark, they might have even tried to hunt it. If it appeared again tomorrow, Mallory was confident they could catch it. Adam had attracted nearby ants by having too much meat, making it impossible for them to get a good night's sleep as they constantly felt ants crawling on them. Sam's feet were so swollen from bites that he felt utterly miserable, as there wasn't a single spot on his body that was intact. By the 10th day, his buttocks were nearly bitten to look like lychee skin, which speaks volumes about how painful the previous night had been. Now, even crocodile meat couldn't lift their spirits. To complete the 40-day challenge, they needed to ensure they had enough sleep. Sam's swollen feet made standing a problem, and more ants were sure to come at night. They needed to build a raised bed. Adam thought they could use the surrounding trees for support. Initially, they hadn't planned on making their shelter too elaborate, since they would be moving after a while, but Sam's condition was severe, so they had to help him through this tough time. First, they needed to build a stable frame, then cover it with branches, and finally, overlay it with palm leaves, completing a simple elevated bed. Mallory was very interested in the crocodile in the water, thinking if they could hunt one, she and Shell could regain a lot of strength. However, they had no bait at the moment and had to first check their fish basket, which had only yielded one small fish. Mallory thought it would be better to use the fish as bait to catch a crocodile rather than eating it, and Shell agreed that eating one more fish wouldn't make much of a difference, but catching a crocodile would. At least they wouldn't have to worry about food for the week. They hung the fish head on a hook as bait. It was food delivered to the doorstep, and the crocodile had no reason not to bite. They felt confident about controlling the crocodile with the hook, and Mallory was hopeful everything would go smoothly as it was her first time hunting a crocodile. She was quite excited and set up the bait along the crocodile's usual path, waiting to see if it would come tonight. Tara was feeling very unwell, as if she had been beaten, and her mood was increasingly low. Lindsay thought instead of comforting her, it would be better to get more food. She believed that if Tara could eat well and sleep well, everything would be all right. There were still 30 days left, and the contestants would get increasingly weaker. Now, they needed more fish to regain strength, but the fish here were indeed too small, only enough to whet their appetite. They felt hungrier the more they ate, as the fish were not satisfying at all. Each person needed to eat 7 or 8 small fish to feel full, and it was crucial to maintain a positive mindset, or the environment would overwhelm them. Kayla had not had a full meal in a long time. She checked her traps daily, but they were not very effective. She needed more food to keep going. Just when Kayla was feeling extremely hungry and questioning her life choices, she suddenly heard a rustling in the bushes. She initially thought it might be a python or something similar, but it turned out to be a crocodile. It wasn't very large, and she wished her teammates were still with her because hunting alone was too dangerous. Her small stature couldn't overpower a crocodile. Nevertheless, Kayla decided to take the risk and try. Surprisingly, despite her physical weakness, she managed to kill the crocodile. Indeed, the contestants who had made it this far were all remarkable. Even without any teammates to assist her, she could hunt a crocodile on her own. Lindsay had gradually adapted to the environment, and fishing had become easier for her. Today she quickly caught a big fish, but was too weak to hold it steady. The fish slipped back into the water while she was not paying attention, which greatly frustrated her. Now, she was not in the mood to continue fishing. She needed to rest and recover as she couldn't bear the thought of all her efforts being wasted. On her way back to camp, she even injured her foot. When one is down on their luck, even flat ground can trip them up. Kayla was busy processing the crocodile. Fortunately, it wasn't very large, and she could handle it alone. After cutting the meat, the next step was to roast it. To ensure it cooked quickly, she cut the meat into smaller pieces. If not for the risk of infection from eating raw meat, she would have swallowed it whole. For Kayla, the timing of the crocodile's arrival was perfect. Eating this crocodile would significantly help her recover, and then she could leave to search for other teams, giving her a chance to complete the challenge. Things were looking up. In order to build a new shelter, Adam and his group had used up most of the energy restored from eating crocodile meat. Despite the hard work, once this task was completed, they would no longer have to worry about ants crawling around at night. Although feeling unwell, Sam still tried his best to chop wood and help the team. Suddenly, thunder sounded in the sky, and it was clear that they could not continue working today. He had to return to the shelter and hope the rain would end soon. Tara and her companions were less fortunate. Their shelter leaked everywhere, and to make matters worse, the firewood got wet. The three of them could only huddle by the fire for warmth. No one could sleep tonight. They had to keep watch over the fire to prevent it from going out. Sam suddenly felt excruciating pain throughout his body, as if he was swelling up and something was expanding inside him. With no other option, they had to call a doctor. Sam felt as if his kidneys were about to burst. The doctor arrived quickly, and after examining Sam, the situation was worse than expected. They had to administer an anti-allergy injection to temporarily relieve his pain. If Sam did not improve, the production team would have no choice but to send him to the hospital. Mallory and Shell were also having a tough time. The weather was extremely cold, and the fire was ineffective. The only piece of good news was that a crocodile had triggered the trap they had set. Hearing the noise, they immediately went to check and found that the crocodile had indeed arrived and the trap had worked, but they missed the opportunity to capture it. They barely made it through to dawn. Lindsay felt their situation was terrible. It was both cold and they were hungry. She hoped her teammates would discuss whether they should continue. Tara and Nathan didn't know how to comfort her, but they still hoped Lindsay would hold on. Lindsay felt torn. Her body was signaling her to leave, yet her mind urged her to persist. After much struggle, she decided to endure a bit longer. Tara had managed despite injuries and dehydration, so she felt she must outlast her. The rain had stopped, but Sam's condition did not improve. He felt he had reached his physical limits and was just waiting for the doctor to take him away. Adam and Heather thought rest would help Sam recover. Sam did not want to be a burden to the team. Despite how bad he felt, he tried to keep working, hoping to alleviate some of their stress. It was a nice thought, but this only made his condition weaker. After nourishing herself with crocodile meat, Kayla felt much revitalized. To prepare for upcoming challenges, she needed to make shoes from the crocodile skin. She took the skin to the creek to clean thoroughly, making sure no meat remained as it would cause the entire skin to rot and stink. Kayla was very grateful to her former challenge partner, who had taught her how to utilize crocodile skin to make shoes. She felt she had progressed a lot compared to before. After washing, she hoped she had enough time to dry it thoroughly. Adam's group had finished the base of their new shelter. Now, they just needed to finish the roof. Constructing it wasn't difficult, but it required a lot of materials. Sam felt increasingly weak. No matter how strong his will, it was hard to fight against his failing body. Sam's teammates constantly comforted him, encouraging him to rest more as they worked on completing the shelter. Despite his desire to finish the challenge, Sam didn't want to be a burden and apologized, feeling sorry. The production team, aware of his poor condition, stayed nearby waiting for him to announce his departure. Without any surprises, Sam became the fourth person to leave. By his abilities, he shouldn't have had to leave so soon and hoped to participate again if possible. Adam and Heather were very downhearted, but the challenge had to continue. They hoped to quickly adjust their emotions as there was no time to mourn Sam's departure. They needed to hurry to finish the shelter, particularly the roof, which they hoped to complete before dark. Mallory was very upset about not catching the crocodile and had lost interest in fishing. Shell suggested they continue to find bait to trap the crocodile, believing it couldn't escape every time. They observed for a long time to find where the crocodile frequently appeared, to better set their trap. Nathan felt the team's mood was very negative, a dangerous sentiment in a wilderness survival situation, especially with Tara, whose emotions were extremely unstable, as if she could explode at any moment. Lindsay disliked the atmosphere so much that she went fishing alone to calm down. From her last challenge involving a dispute over the use of a knife, she knew communication was crucial. Suddenly, Tara yelled at them to stop touching her things, even though no one had. Lindsay felt very wronged and did not want to continue with the team. Mallory planned to explore the entire water area, confident that they would find a crocodile. However, reality was harsh. They wasted a lot of time and effort and caught nothing, only exhausting themselves and feeling worse off. Shell felt this couldn't continue and planned to catch more fish. Adam's group had almost completed the shelter and now just needed to properly place the fire pit using branches, clay, and stones to prevent the fire from burning down the shelter. Fortunately, they had all the necessary materials around them, which were not hard to collect. They felt everything was developing well and felt great in their new shelter at night, although it was unfortunate that Sam couldn't stay with them. By the 12th day of the challenge, Kaila had planned to make shoes from crocodile skin, but the drying process had not gone well. Part of the skin had already peeled off, and it smelled terrible. Unfortunately, she would have to catch another crocodile and try again next time. When Mallory woke up, she found the bait missing and the trap empty. The crocodile had come by again during the night and taken the bait. She felt like a complete failure. Mallory's physical condition was deteriorating, and it seemed likely she might exit the challenge. After eating the crocodile meat by the 15th day, Kaila decided to seek out other teams. To avoid the harsh sun, she covered her body in mud, hoping to make her journey a bit more comfortable. Despite having eaten a good amount of crocodile meat, hiking was incredibly tiring. She walked for a long time without finding any other contestants, but she did find a water source. She quickly stopped to make a fire and replenish her water supply. The area seemed vaguely familiar. Kaila eventually found new teammates. Mallory and Shell thought they were hallucinating from hunger, but they were surprised to see someone actually approach them. They were curious why Kaila was alone, and after some conversation, they learned that her teammates had already quit the challenge. She had managed to survive on her own and even catch a crocodile, which impressed them greatly. Now, as a trio, they felt more hopeful about catching crocodiles. After some discussion, Kaila realized that her new teammates were not in good condition and worried she might soon have to see them leave as well. For now, she had no better options and decided to take things one step at a time. Whether Kaila's joining could change their constant hunger remained to be seen. Meanwhile, Tara's group finally reached the day for her stitches to be removed. She hoped her wounds had healed well so she could rejoin the challenge without becoming a burden to her team. Fortunately, her recovery was going well, although she still couldn't come into contact with water to avoid infection. Tara planned to practice archery, hoping to hunt in the jungle. It had been a while since she was active, but her skills were still sharp. She felt her condition improving and was confident she could complete the challenge with her teammates. Seeing Tara's improved spirits, Lindsay finally breathed a sigh of relief. Now they could fully commit to hunting. However, resources were indeed scarce in their area, making her consider whether they should move to another location. Heather had intended to hunt with a bow and arrow, but to her disappointment, the bow had been damaged, likely due to the humid environment. With no other choice, they had to rely on fishing to satisfy their hunger. Adam felt there were still plenty of fish around, although they weren't very large. As long as there were enough of them, they could still have a full meal. After some effort, they managed to catch 6 fish, which put them in a great mood. They brought the hard-earned food back to their shelter, but Adam was surprised to find parasites in the fish. For safety, they couldn't eat the fish and had to target crocodiles instead. Tara was nearby looking for food, hoping to encounter a crocodile. Suddenly, she spotted a group of birds and slowly approached them. Catching one could provide a full meal for everyone. Tara was within shooting range and had only one chance to shoot. The pressure was immense. Unfortunately, she missed by a little. Watching the food fly away left her feeling terrible. The bird had been stationary, yet she still missed. However, it wasn't the time for sadness. Tara had to continue searching for food. Despite her efforts, she didn't see any more edible animals and had to keep moving deeper into the area. Adam and Heather planned to use the parasite-infested fish as bait to attract crocodiles. Since they had finished the crocodile meat, Adam felt exhausted. He dragged his tired body to set up traps, preferring not to relocate too soon. After setting up the trap in the water, he knew that if they didn't catch a crocodile this time, he would have to discuss with Heather where to go next. After Kayla joined a new team, they started looking for crocodiles nearby. They saw crocodiles every night but couldn't catch any. They could catch small fish in the fish basket to use as bait. Kayla felt there was still a chance to catch a crocodile. They were just a bit unlucky. Mallory felt extremely tired but endured the discomfort to set up traps. Kayla was very worried about this. She didn't want to lose another teammate. So, she went into the jungle, hoping to find some food to replenish her teammates' nutrition. All she found were some berries, which were not enough to fill their stomachs. They desperately needed some protein. Nathan was busy weaving ropes, intending to make a trap to catch small animals. His trap was simple, using a stick to hold up a stone that would crush the bait once disturbed. It had been a long time since he had any meat, and he badly needed some food to keep going. Lindsay was searching for food in the jungle and noticed many traces near a burrow entrance, likely made by armadillos. She set up a snare at the entrance, as food was hard to come by in this area. The trap seemed promising, but it was uncertain whether it would successfully catch any prey. That night, a heavy rain began to fall. Adam was quite satisfied with their new shelter, which was unaffected by the rain. Tara's group, however, suffered as their shelter filled with water, forming a small river inside, forcing them to remain awake all night to keep the fire going by continuously adding firewood. They barely made it to the morning of the 16th day. Nathan felt terrible as their stockpile of firewood had run out and they now had to gather more. Lindsay had a restless night, constantly worrying about the water rising and flooding their shelter. Caterpillars had even crawled inside, and these local caterpillars were very poisonous, causing severe fiery pain upon contact with skin and potentially fatal if severe enough. The thought of them appearing on the bed at night was frightening. Mallory hadn't given up on trying to catch crocodiles and needed more bait to attract them. Kayla strongly agreed with this strategy, believing that catching a crocodile would improve their situation. They were willing to stay up all night waiting for crocodiles to come ashore, confident they could catch enough fish for bait. The nearby cove still had plenty of fish. Kayla tried fishing, and within a short time, they had caught some, which excited them greatly. Adam's group, however, still could not catch a crocodile. The bait in their trap was gone, and the crocodile had eaten it and escaped, which frustrated them immensely. Were they going to go hungry again today? Suddenly, Heather spotted a snake coiled up resting in a tree. Adam immediately climbed the tree to confront the snake, not willing to pass up any potential food source. Heather was worried about this, as a snake bite in this remote wilderness was no joking matter. After searching for a long time with no sight of the snake, Adam decided not to waste more time and energy on it. Adam considered returning to the previous waters to find crocodiles, but it would take a lot of time to get there, and even if they caught a crocodile, transporting it back would be troublesome. If they failed to find food soon, he was prepared to take the risk and head back there. Lindsay and Nathan went to check the trap. Although they didn't catch anything, they saw signs of disturbance, proving there was indeed food in the burrow. Lindsay reset the trap, confident that any emerging prey would be caught. After setting it up, they immediately left the area to avoid scaring off the prey with their scent. Lindsay was truly exhausted from all her efforts to secure food. Nathan's trap was triggered but caught nothing, so he had to reset it and then return to the shelter to continue enduring hunger. Tara felt that continuing like this was not sustainable and suggested expanding their search area. After discussing as a team, they headed to an unexplored area and soon found some wild fruits which tasted quite good. Although not as nutritious as protein, eating the fruits helped restore some of their energy. As they walked, they gathered more fruits, noting the scarcity of resources nearby. They might have to move to another location sooner than expected. Suddenly, Lindsay screamed in pain as she accidentally touched a caterpillar, causing her leg to go numb instantly. They immediately called for a doctor, and her leg began to blister. Lindsay was on the verge of tears, not wanting to quit the challenge over this. The doctor arrived quickly and found the swelling where the caterpillar had touched, but the situation was not as bad as feared. The caterpillar's poison was relatively mild and not lethal, only requiring some rest to subside. The doctor didn't even administer antibiotics before leaving, and they thankfully got through the crisis without further danger. Lindsay was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief.